make any mistake today, and you can be sure as day that everything, the law and its uncle, will be thrown at you. Do we have a particular set of people that are untouchable in the country?
Let me start by saying this, that at least we know of a number of institutions that seem to be still giving us a sense that things work. Mm-hmm. We know that if you go to the judiciary, you will be able to be heard. You may not agree with the decision, but you might like the process, that at least you went through a process. So there are still some things that are happening. You know, if you take a case to court, it will be scheduled, you will be heard, and that within time you might get a decision one way or the other. That is okay. We also know that the ordinary Kenyan, is still very dutiful, pays his taxes or her taxes, is still very hopeful, thinks very highly of this country and wants it to do very well. So those are constants. Mm-hmm. But we also know of people in this country who think they own the country, who think they own the Kenyans, who think they are accountable to nobody, who think they are the best thing that happened to Kenyans, and that therefore they are here for the longest haul. That we also know. The tragedy of it is that we are slowly encouraging lawlessness, and what I think is critical here is lack of accountability. That if you are holding office and you are not accountable to anybody, you don't want to subject yourself to any accountability, then that is a tragedy. So that if you are Inspector General, it means that you are holding that position in trust by Kenyan people who have given you the opportunity to serve. Now, if you don't want even to appear to be listening to Kenyans or to appear to be doing something that Kenyans would then be happy about, then there's a problem. But that said, it is one of those things that one can say starts from the top. When you say that the fish rots from the head, you would want to think that the government or indeed the executive would want to put issues out there and ensure that people are accountable. But nothing. The other day I saw a very senior minister being interviewed, and there was a splash of 11 billion, and he wasn't bothered. It wasn't an issue. I mean, he didn't even think that should disturb anybody. So we have reached a point where accountability is lacking, and that when it is lacking and huge sums of monies are being talked about and nobody is being taken to account or even taken to court, that's a problem. We've seen accidents. What happened to Jirongo? He died. Investigations were closed. And then, surely, there are many things that you can say we would want to see some conclusion, some closure on them. But it doesn't happen. So the headlines will splash. Billions will be lost. Mm-hmm. But nobody would be held to account. So that means that we have agreed that nothing really bothers us.
Okay, is it by design? Why do I ask that? Because you've just mentioned about the accident, Jirongo's accident, right? And we saw how the investigations went. People ask the questions until today, an entire bus, 65-seater bus. Only the driver spoke. You know what I mean?
And almost immediately.
And you closed the matter. Did you manage to follow through where the rest of the passengers were? What was the an inquiry to just find out exactly what happened? But you have to read that, Wakili, together with the killing of a member of parliament in Nairobi and how those investigations were done. Then you get to understand that there appears to be levels of individuals in the country who, when something happens to them, or if you are on the right political side of the discourse, things will happen. Is it by design? Or is it how Kenya has always been?
No, Kenya has not always been that way. I think that what we are seeing is unprecedented. I mean, you saw the other day the leader of DCP in a church in Othaya. And he organized goons to go and violate the church. Okay, let's assume there was no hand of the state. But what has the state done to ensure that people who go to church are not violated, they are respected, to ensure that you do not carry political fights into the church? I don't think that what the DCP leader was going to do in church was political. And even if it was, wait for him outside the church. Why would you want to violate the church? The next thing we are going to do, we are going to walk into, hospitals. We are going to tear gas hospitals. We are going to do things in schools. I mean, there has to be some decorum. There has to be some decency. There has to be some level of restraint that we want to encourage. So it's not that we have been there, but we are slowly being taken to the wrong road. It's not that we think it's right. We know it's not right, and we are calling it out for what it is. So ours is to keep on saying what should be the correct position. And to me, we should be respectful. We should be able to allow differences of opinion. We should be able to disagree. We should be able to express ourselves, because that's what is our human, the human rights is not what the Constitution gives us. No, it is what we deserve as humans. Because as humans, I must be different from you, Dennis. So should no be different from us, but we must coexist. We must still agree to keep on talking, even though we know that we hold very different views, and that's the essence of democracy, the essence of humanity. So yes, we are degenerating. It's not that we have always been like this, and all I can say is that these are things that will only get us better, because we'll start thinking about it. We'll start being, next time, Dennis, you come and ask us to give you leadership, we'll interrogate you. We'll doubt some of the things you'll be telling us. So there is something good that's happening, even in this many chaos that we are seeing. Yeah.
Is it a good thing to talk about these issues and to bring them to the fore in order to achieve that thing that you've just said? That you let people know that under somebody's watch, 3.7 million shillings was spent on a Christmas tree. You let somebody know that under somebody's watch, 100,000 shillings was spent on a wheelbarrow. That you let somebody know that under somebody else's watch, 11 billion shillings that was to be meant for healthcare has somehow disappeared under the cover of daylight. That people have been given close to 1 trillion shillings over the last 13 years. And we see that water sources have not been maintained and or even established. Is it a good thing to bring these things continuously into the open? Because then what it does is that it delivers a level of civic education probably that no other process can, because you see directly what somebody's misgivings are, and that the possibility of you allowing them another chance to do that is slimmer.
Absolutely. It's not just a good thing, it's the right thing to do. That ours is to say what is correct. I mean, that's why you can ask me to come here in the morning and I come, because somebody needs to say the things that people need to know and need to hear. So when we sit in these studios and when we talk about these things, that is what we are supposed to be doing. The beautiful thing about it is that with time, people will appreciate and people will also make the right decision. So we don't want to imagine, or we don't want to tell people that it's all lost, or we don't want even those who are doing this to imagine that Kenyans are not aware. They are aware. When Kenyans can't see health services, when you must now go to use chiefs and force to get children to go to school, something is wrong. Where a system is working, you do not need to come to my house and push a child. But that my child is not going to school means that I have some inabilities or disabilities that I am unable to fend for these children. So make sure that people are okay, life is bearable, and that schools are working, health sector is working. For now, we want to say, next time we'll say, we will force people to go to hospital. We'll go and pick people, put them on a wheelbarrow, because there will be no ambulance. Take them to hospital. That is tragic. People are supposed to get to hospital when they are unwell, and they're supposed to get treated. People are supposed to have their children go to school, and education is supposed to be affordable. Responsible countries ensure that social services, education, health, housing, food, the basic things are available to the people. So for us, we are struggling with the basics. I know, for example, that we have made so many promises, but we have not achieved them. But Kenyans know when they are being shortchanged. They know. Yeah.
Wakili, how important is it then for Kenyans to feel that justice has been served? Follow me through this. So we talk about 11 billion shillings that has been lost in the health sector, right? In SHA. But let's relate that to how that has affected Kenyans seeking services. No medicine, Kenyans dying, equipment not working, healthcare workers not in hospital. Let's look at delayed capitation. As we speak today, grade 10s have not been able to open a book because textbooks were not printed. Yet Kenyans have been taxed. We talk about traffic rules in the country and degeneration of the same. What has that done? Because we are bribing, we see the border operators are in there. You hit them, there's an accident, they burn your vehicle. As a result, yesterday, Kenyans were unable to go to their places of work, to give the government the taxes they need, because the entire chain in the traffic department is messed up, is destroyed. As a result, the government of Kenya yesterday did not get the taxes that they want for this country to go to Singapore. We talk about stolen county funds. Today, as we speak, the northern frontier counties, forecast was given many, many months ago on what it is will come. What did they do with that? Did they invest in that? Are their granaries full today? No. With all these things happening, therefore, Akili, it is important for Kenyans to see the wheels of justice move to ensure that a repeat of this does not happen. But that is not what we see. What we see is a repetition of mistakes over and over and over again. Therefore, then, how critical is it? How important is it for Kenyans to feel that justice is being served?
I think that Kenyans deserve justice. Kenyans deserve services. They deserve fairness. And that's the right thing. That's the human right bit of every Kenyan who should be able to have shelter, who should be able to take their children to school, who should be able to have food on their table and so on. That's a right. Having said that, governments have responsibility to ensure that services and people are not in want. They are not desperate. They are not hopeless. And that's why people elect governments. That's why people need governments in the first place. But on this one, I think that we must also fault ourselves because we don't seem to have set good standards for ourselves as a country. And I'm saying this with a lot of understanding that these problems we're witnessing are not just confined to government.
Yes.
It's creeping into families. It's creeping into small organizations. I'm executing a very funny, not a very funny, but a very interesting argument from a small club I belong to. And I'm asking for accountability. And I'm asking for information. And you can see the guys who are in charge are playing around and dancing. They don't want to answer the questions. So this is a problem we have. That the moment you hoist people in power, they begin to operate as demigods. And that's our problem, that it is about how schools are run, how we run private institutions, how we run spaces that we have been entrusted, and I dare say even religious organizations. So there is a problem that we must deal with as a people. That if it's not good for government to do, if it's not good for a member of parliament to do, it should also not be good for an elected chair of anything to do, whether it's the chair of a cattle dip or the chair of a road project. There are things that we should understand. Earlier on when we were talking about Botswana, you wake up and there's a country that understands that its first business is to make sure that the natural resources of that country benefits the people. Here, the first thing you start when you find natural resources, you start by alienating the land and allocating to somebody else.
Yeah.
You go to Kakamega and you have found some gold. The first thing you do is mistreat the people who have been on that and try to displace them. What kind of humans are we? Because then who do we really exist for? So what we should be saying is that ideally, a good government, a good leadership should be able to take care of people, just like a good parent or good parents. Their first responsibility is to bring up good citizens called children, give them a good life, and then they'll be better Kenyans. So we have quite a bit of distance to cover, so that we can be able to improve our total ethical lifestyles, and there's our basis for relationships and the whole issue of accountability. So I want to say that, unfortunately, and I want to say this here, that unfortunately our leaders reflect us. Because if we did not tolerate such leaders, they would not exist even for one day. If we did not tolerate corruption, we would not even entertain it, or our leaders would not even be joking about it. So unfortunately.
Yeah. So people treat you the way you let them.
Yeah.
The way you allow people to treat you is exactly what they will do.
Yeah.
It's a question I've never asked before, and I just thought about it. Do you think that these things that we see, the missing money, the stolen money, the ignorance of things like court orders, just this wanton misbehavior that we see, do you think that those who do these things or are involved in them feel that what they're doing is wrong?
No, they don't even think so. And I have I've seen some very senior people in big positions who are, in my view, very knowledgeable. Some are academics, some are lawyers, some are, people with credentials. They don't seem to have any regret whatsoever when they are going on a path that is off etiquette, off ethics and so on. So that you are in charge of security apparatus. You don't seem to be concerned that people are being killed in a manner that is inhuman. I mean, there's no feeling, there's no sense that from where you're sitting, anything is disturbing you. So it's like we have outsourced our conscience. So our conscience is outsourced, especially from the leadership, that they have decided to be less human for the time being they're in leadership. They'll pick up being human later, as if that is something that they are assured about, that today you are less human and tomorrow you'll be more human. I don't know whether that works. But we have a situation where you can't tell me that these leaders or these people that we see flouting court orders, these people that we see rubbishing anybody who calls them to account, these people that we see hailing bullets at people who are only demonstrating, who are only disagreeing with them through their actions. I don't think that these people see that what they are doing is right. They know it's wrong, but they have outsourced their conscience, and therefore, for now, killing or being arrogant or being rude or being disrespectful seems to be okay, which is less of what one wants to see of human beings, because civilization calls for us to have decorum. And unfortunately, you can say that this is a trend that's now taking shape globally, because when you look at some of the things we are seeing leaders do in even the so-called civilized nations, where you hound your opponents, you arrest people, and there is something that's happening that is totally uncivil, one that one would not have wanted to see in terms of where the direction of travel in matters civilization. We should be getting more accommodating, more tolerating, more respectful. But unfortunately, the opposite is happening.
Is it time for culture change? In the sense that if you look at the leaders that you do have, it is a representation of who we are as a people. That the mess that we see today, we have participated in creating that mess. That for us to see the change that we want to see today, that for us to see action being taken, we must change as Kenyans. That when someone comes to campaign and you're being given bribe money to show up for those meetings, if Kenyans say no, then that change will definitely be experienced. Because I remember a time when one, Mr. Mishuki, the Minister of Transport at the time, came in and said, you guys, these are the rules and you have to play by them. What happened then? Kenyans started arresting corrupt officers, even started arresting rogue drivers and conductors at the time. That means at that time, that change, the culture change at that time happened, and we saw the results. That if we change today, then everyone else in that chain will just follow suit.
You know, they started arresting, and thought that these people would be arraigned to court. Only for them to go to the police cells and then they are released and they never went. So there is they were let down somewhere down the line. I think we should not tire in asking Kenyans to do the right thing. We should not tire in telling Kenyans that the responsibility for what this country will be belongs to them, because when they decide this country will be a good country, it will be a good country. So they cannot run away from responsibility. And I agree with you. If you are taking bribes, if you are allowing somebody to come and give you money, or as we saw in the by-elections, to give you blankets and give you mattresses so that you vote, you are letting yourself down. You are letting the country down. You should not be voting because of what you've been given. If anything, the people that are giving you those tokens should know better that you deserve even a Mercedes, you deserve even a Rolls Royce, you deserve more than a blanket or yes. Because you should be the person who enjoys, when things are happening in this country, when you go to hospital, things should be working for you. When you want to take your children to school, you should have them in school. So that's what you deserve, not a blanket, not a mattress. But because of desperation, and because also Kenyans have learned that these leaders don't account to them, they are so transactional. They want to finish with that leader now. They say, tunakujua, we know you. We will finish with you now, because when you go, we will not see you again. Very unfortunate and happenings, but they are happening. So my plea to us is to say, look, as a people, yes, there will be culture change. There will be need for us to have a different way of looking at things. That way we shall attract the right leaders. Remember, we have been there before. When the people who are fighting for independence, the likes of Martin Shikuku, the likes of Moses, or the likes of Masinde Muliro and so on, when these people were fighting, they were actually selfless. Tomboyers of this world, they were selfless. And even when we started our politics, we never looked at money issue. In fact, you never went to politics to make money. It was a part-time job. And you got an allowance. Until we started giving MPs money, and we started telling them this is... Because see, people like Shikuku would say, look, I am your watchman. I only go to talk for you. But until now, people came and said, no, we want money, we want pension, we want what. Now we commercialized representation. And people also began to commercialize their relationship with their representatives. So we are now in a place where you cannot have enough money as an MP, and you cannot have enough to be given as a citizen. So that's our challenge, and we must live with it. Yes, we need to interrogate, and we need to think again, how do we organize to lead or to elect leaders? If we don't check that, we will always attract. Somebody said that all money launderers and all robbers will come and seek leadership as well. And they do, by the way. When they come, nobody asks them where the source of money is. Today, if I see you brandishing money, giving me 1,000 shillings, I would want to know, why are you giving me this money? But now when you go to the village and you start to go there with a big car and you come out of the rooftop and you dish the money, nobody wants to know how much, where you've gotten the money. And that's a tragedy. Yeah.
I look at the African continent. Dennis gave a proverb from Botswana this morning, and it's one of the countries that's progressively forward-leaning in terms of what they've been able to do with their governance and then just the development. Another of those countries is Burkina Faso. Whether we're looking at an interim government or not, it doesn't matter. But there's certain things that before that, people made the Burkinabes believe that it was a fantasy, that things like this could only happen if you existed in the outer realm. But they're seeing these things happen in their country country under the leadership of somebody who's serious about this thing and saying, you know what, we're not going to allow this happen anymore. So the people can see the direct benefits of good governance. In Kenya 2 years ago, let's be honest, is that there was a boost of hope that was given to people, and they said, okay, perhaps an administration is going to come in that is going to also be forward-leaning. Has that happened? And many thought that Kenya would be one of those countries whereby this progressive movement then was happening. For all intents and purposes, it seems to have regressed in a number of ways. What would be your scorecard? What would you say would be the situation on things if 2 to 3 years ago, when Kenyans thought, okay, we're going to breathe maybe a little bit easier now and we're going to see things improve? Has that happened?
You see, one thing that you're saying, though, is that at least for once, there was a narrative that seemed to be suggesting that the bottom would be prioritized in terms of resource allocation, programs and so on. So that was a good narrative. I mean, from a political narrative, I think that this government scored very well in terms of the campaign, in terms of messaging and so on. What has since happened is the tragedy, which is that as soon as they took up leadership, they forgot what was their key business, because their key business was Mama Mboga, the simple guys trying to make an economy work. The economy that we are now seeing constructed here, where trillions are being stolen and being borrowed, this money isn't going to where you would want to imagine, which is the best, to increase the empowerment, financial inclusion, to try and bring up those who are, down that ladder. Look at the housing, so-called affordable housing. Who is the target? How I wish you told me that a few Mama Mbogas and a few casual workers have since owned houses. But even that, would they be concerned about owning a house or just managing a livelihood? So there are things that we do and we have to ask, whose interests are we serving? The analogy we are being given that we want to be like Singapore. Singapore is a port city. Singapore is an urban country. Certainly, Kenya cannot be an urban country overnight. And even if it was to do that, that will take us a long time. Yes, you're admiring the GDP, but on what is that economy based? It's based on services, and again, how are those services generated? They are actually looking to ways in which they are attracting and also sending out their best brains to make sure that they have some resources coming back to them. Now, for us, what is our strategy? What is that we want to depend on? Is it agriculture? Is it our, population? What is it? Is it our industry? And if it is, what are we doing to ensure that we invest in those areas so that our industries, our agriculture, our backbone can actually be held firm and taken forward? So, talking about our score, I think I don't even want to go there. Okay. It's just that you don't score something that you abandoned in the first place.
Okay.
You are looking at a very different narrative, but in terms of how things are turning out today, it's the same, if not worse. I mean, it's about it's about businesses, it's about those in leadership making more money or just running roughshod over everybody else. That's not what one is looking for. One is looking for a bottom-up empowering program or strategy of government that then makes people better.
Yeah, and that lies squarely on the kind of leadership that we have. And we'd look at leadership from the aspect of political parties and the ideologies that they do stand for, the vision they do have for the country, and if at all, the vision that they sell to Mwananchi is what is being implemented. And if they fail to do that, then what's the relationship with Mwananchi if you fail to deliver the promise as given to them? And is it also about time that you find professionals have for a very long time not wanted to participate in politics of the country? I look at the middle class and it's politics niawale, we don't want to get involved. Is it time that Kenyans of goodwill, professionals, get into these offices, these political spaces, and participate in molding the country to be what they want. We can't afford to leave it to that club that has existed over time and expect that we will do things the same way and expect a different result.
I wish I had a direct answer, but I don't have. One thing that I can tell you is that let professionals do what they know how to do best. If you are an engineer, you are a lawyer, you are an accountant, do what you know how to do best. Politics is not one of those things that you may do best. Because the average Kenyan voter has no interest in what you've just described. They know that all politicians are the same. They know politicians will promise them what they will not deliver. And they also know that if you are not going to work with them at their level, you are not their choice. So if you are a professional, they also know that you have very little connection with them. So professionals will not make it in this political scene of ours. Same to and this is a joke that sometimes I like to say. When one church leader said they wanted to be president, and they knew that whenever they have crusades, they have a lot of followers. When he tried it, that's when he knew there's a difference between politics and Christianity. Because the people that come to church are not changed. They are still
in the process.
Tribe. Yeah. They are still the tribe. And even if they are born again, they are still the tribe. So when you think they are going to use their religion, or when you think that the Christians will vote for you, you find they are not there. So in other words, if you are a professional and you are going to ask for votes from this Kenyan voter the way I know them, you are going to face a very big challenge. So what is the best thing that a professional can do? Let us do what we can do from the spaces that we have. I mean, if I come here, let me do my best. If you are teaching, do your best. If you are an accountant, do your best. If you are a lawyer, do your best. If you are a surveyor, do your best. But remember one thing. For every ill in this country, including theft and including corruption, including collapsed building, all professionals or most professionals are part of the problem.
Okay, so that's interesting that you've brought that up, because then we go into issues of incompetence, which actually was going to be my next question. That there is a buzzing narrative at the moment that if incompetence shows or rears its head, then the one who that stain of incompetence lays on then should actually drop their tools and go home. There's a very famous case from 2023 where there was a terrible train accident, and the Greek transport minister at the time was Konstantinos Karamanlis. And before you could say Jack's your uncle, before you knew what was going on, before we even knew that 67 people had died in that crash, the man resigned. Because previously there had been perennial transport issues with the train. There were many errors. And this one that saw 67 people die in what was a terrible crash, the man said, you know what, I tender my resignation before it was even afternoon. That was in February 2023. Today, and this was Greece, who had just been saved from the tentacles of, a bankrupt state by the EU just before that. And so they were still clawing their way, more or less, out of this thing. And to see that something like this would happen, he said, not on my watch. I cannot be the one then who's sitting here where such a terrible thing has happened over the reforms that we've not been able to put in place yet. If we bring it closer home, just last week, when members of parliament were in Naivasha, the leader of the majority basically took the education PSs and CS head on. And he said, no, you guys are incompetent. We've seen buildings collapse. And we have a CS who is the head of, all of this at the scene and saying heads will roll. Guess what? Not one head has rolled since those buildings collapsed. Nobody has been fingered as the one who was behind this. Not one name has been given as the person who gave the approvals for buildings collapse where people died and property was destroyed. 11 billion shillings is taken. We don't even bat an eyelid. So when we talk about competence and we talk about wanting to go in this narrative now that we are starting to see maybe rearing its head, where Kimani Ichung'wah has spoken for the second time in as many weeks as of yesterday on certain issues, should we be looking at that situation where we say, no, if something happens under your watch, or if there is a trail of misdeeds under your watch, my friend, don't think twice. Come and be going.
that will happen elsewhere, not in this country. Do you remember a cabinet minister, was it a secretary or minister, who said he would rather die than resign?
Yeah.
And that's the, this is not a place where, this is not Japan. This is not a place where shame makes you leave office. No. In fact, shame is likely to propel you to better things. Controversy is likely to propel you to better things. Notoriety is likely to propel you to better things. And that is our tragedy. That if you go and tell somebody that you have failed, they'll tell you. I mean, I watched this interview I'm talking about, and I was very, very taken aback. I mean, the fellow was saying that all the money that governors are having are building in Nairobi, but everybody else is building in Nairobi. I mean, missing the point. The point is, to what extent do we want to make these places also attractive destinations? Yeah. And somebody said, why don't we also build national schools in this place so that then we don't have to flood people from there going elsewhere? Then they can also enjoy national schools. So the point I'm saying is that we don't seem to care about some of these things. And I don't know whether in my lifetime I'll ever see a Kenyan senior person who will resign because they think they have failed. If anything, they'll be telling us how they think they deserve to be around. When you have given somebody a responsibility, they should be the first persons to say, wait a minute, here we have failed. Let us allow others who are better than us to do it. But in our circumstances, we've never seen it. And I'm here to find. I don't think that I'll see it in my lifetime in this country.
You see, for justice to occur in the country, the agencies that have been mandated with investigations must step up. So we look at police brutality. IPOA is there, the Internal Affairs Unit. One asks, if a police officer is killed, how then do they investigate themselves? Is the question. But that's in their own modus operandi. That is how they operate. You go to ODPP and you look at ODPP and the withdrawal of cases from the courts, and one asks the question, if there was evidence enough that you're convinced this matter had to go to court, why not just allow the process to end and conclude in court? Why we keep on withdrawing cases? And Kenyans are asking the question, what are you trying to hide? Who is this that is calling the shots? EACC, corruption cases in the country. We're talking about 3.7 million shillings on a Christmas tree. Where is EACC on prudent use of resources to the counties? Where is the county assembly that is supposed to oversee the use of all this? Is there any semblance that these agencies mandated with investigating and ensuring that there is proper use of resources are doing anything?
Earlier on you asked a question about political parties and ideology, and I don't even think that I touched it. And generally, our issues around ideology are critical. If you want to know that political parties have no ideology, look at what's happening in ODM. You ask whether there was a social democracy, you ask whether there was any vision in it. You just look at ODM and you see this is classical. You don't know whether it was Raila who was the party, and without Raila, there's no party. You don't know. And if you look at UDA, you don't understand it. You don't know whether it is, the president who is the party or the party is. So these issues of ideology are difficult. But having said that, what we are dealing with here is a situation that we want to suggest to ourselves. That we must take responsibility. If we are not taking responsibility, nobody else will do it for us. And that as a people, we must decide. Only a people who have clarity about their direction and their vision will know where to go. We have seen it here. And in fact, when you are talking about Kimani Ichung'wah and so on, I'm like, okay, fine. Kimani Ichung'wah could come and talk about what talk the things he has said. But what is his weight on those fellows? On who cares about those? You know, who listened to him, and who is the appointing authority for this? As long as the appointing authority hasn't sanctioned these people, there's no problem. The common denominator here, and I don't know whether the common denominator on the leadership and the executive and appointments is that it is not possible to hold anybody to account, because responsibility for what they do may not be resting with them. It's resting elsewhere. Yes. So that when you see a cabinet secretary talking and doesn't care about what you're saying about 11 billion and so on, it means he knows that even the people who might be responsible for this money are not touchable. So he will just come and talk about what he wants to, because he knows that even if he was to shout, short of him going away, which he will not do, nothing will happen to them. So here we are. We have to inspire in ourselves at some point that we cannot be the way we are and expect to be better. But I keep thinking that sometimes things get bad for them to get better. When you talk about investigating agencies, the one thing that as Kenyans we sometimes forget is that the government we have and the system of governance that we have is no different from the colonial system that we had. So that if today you have chiefs, today you have police who behave like what the colonial governor wanted of them, who see a Kenyan as nothing and they can kill and step on them. And if you have a government that depends on the chiefs to tell them what's happening in the village, because these structures were never meant to enable the Kenyan to be independent, to be empowered. They were meant to noose, to suffocate their spaces. So if you have that as your models, and I see a lot of our so-called elite leaders still also entrenching this system. So we have no way, we are not in any way going to get out of this until we dismantle our systems. We have said that you devolve, go to counties, and you carry the same habits from the national to the county level. And people are still not being able to feel, because initially we wanted this county system or devolved system to go all the way to the villages. Instead, it's the national system that we are seeing still going to the villages. So it's an ideological issue. It is a choice we are making to ourselves. Unfortunately, that choice is not for us to progress better, to be better people, but perhaps to just continue being where we are and dancing in the mud and thinking that we're making progress.
It's got to move at some point. And somebody put a comment in here earlier and said, well, perhaps people are not ready to be governed properly.
No, it's not that they are not ready to be governed properly. They are not ready to take responsibility. Because at the end of the day, if we are not responsible in this studio, nobody will take us seriously. And we will not even know what we want. But if we know that we intend to have a program to run from 7 to 8, we will do it. And after 8, we'll move to the next thing. But if we don't know what we want, if we wake up in the morning, we have no plan, we can never make progress. So being governed is one thing, but knowing what you want
and taking responsibility is
another.
Yeah. A good place to end it this morning. Thank you, Martin Olo, for being here with us this morning. Shedding light on these issues continually, every day. We must plug into them. Asante Sana for doing that for us. Martin Olo, advocate and political analyst, has joined us this morning for this conversation. We continue. We'll talk more. Be intentional. Take responsibility. Good morning at 8 a.m.
The latest news from around the world. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.